Hello, everyone. I'd like to welcome everyone to another episode of Heart to Heart with Bree. I was having some technical problems with my computer before we went live, so please forgive us for being a little late. But
Yeah.
anyway, tonight's topic is sex and intimacy.
Mm.
Andrew is back tonight, so Andrew, please introduce yourself to the viewers.
Sure. Again, my name is Andrew Green, and I am here to share my experience, my walk with the Lord, and hopefully in this heart discussion, someone that's out there that's probably on the verge of thinking about surrendering their lives to Christ, or probably they are contemplating something in their lives that have to do with intimacy and how that connects with their Christianity. Hopefully, this what we discuss here will bring some light and some clarity to someone out there.
But and I like to remind the viewers that when I started this podcast,
Mhm.
it was because I was on a healing journey. And I
Right.
believe that there are others who are on a healing journey too.
Right.
We're,
Yeah.
we're all learning together. We learn
Yes.
from each other.
Yes.
So tonight's topic, I think, will be very interesting.
Hmm.
We'll be
Hmm.
talking about sex and intimacy. This is
Hmm.
an area where many struggle, but
Yeah. Yeah.
people don't like to talk about things like this. But I think we need to
It's
shed light on this
necessary.
topic.
Yeah. It's
So,
necessary.
yeah, so we'll jump right into it. My first question is, well, first of all, what I would like to say is let's talk about sex without intimacy. Without intimacy. For
Oh, sex
example,
without.
like a casual fling. So,
Oh,
what's
right.
your take on that? Sex
Right. Yeah.
without intimacy.
Yeah. I think that's just right up there with one of those tools up of the devil. How uh, for every good um, institution that God has set up for mankind, the devil has a counterfeit, and the way how the world would sort of promote sex is, if you're alone, it makes you, says that you're lonely, and if you're probably married, then sex is bored. So therefore, the the answer to loneliness and boredom is casual sex. So you can get the milk without having to buy the cow, that type of thing. Uh, so I think it's out there, it's glorified in the media, and to to everyone, the answer is do it, but do it safely. If you're going to do it, make sure that you're using some form of contraceptive. So they are promoting it, and they're making it seem safe and enjoyable, but not
Well, Ed,
everything.
I will say this.
Yeah.
I will say to those who are participating in sex, I do believe in the practice of safe sex. And
Exactly.
I would not necessarily say that, how can I put it? I think it's better to be safe, better to be careful instead of getting a disease and
Right.
getting someone pregnant, or a woman getting pregnant,
Right.
another pregnancy that she may not be able to afford or really need in her
Right.
life. Yeah,
Exactly. Right.
there are some things that have become very commonplace in the
Mhm.
world, but
Yeah.
when I think about it,
Mhm.
I think that it's a band-aid, a
Yeah.
temporary fix, that
Right.
another vice. I think it's just another vice that some
Exactly.
people turn to. You mentioned
It's
loneliness.
Yeah. It's
You
just it's
mentioned
just a
loneliness.
lesser sin that is packaged nicely, um, without giving telling the full story, the full truth. Like, not because something is legal, makes it right. Not because something uh, is in the Constitution makes it Christian. You know, not because you can makes it expedient. So we just have to be more thoughtful about this thing, casual sex.
Well, you know what I'm hoping that the viewers will take from this is it will give them something to think about, because
Right.
I think too often that
Mhm.
sex is mistaken for intimacy. You know, you may have that
Right.
temporary feeling at the
Mhm.
moment, but
Right.
there's a big letdown that comes later.
Right.
Especially in a casual situation.
Right.
So
And
I do
yeah.
think we need to be mindful because our bodies are a temple, but
Right.
it's like at the end of the day, is it any different than someone going out there drinking, doing drugs,
Mhm.
overindulging in food or whatever it is?
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
it's just
Yeah.
for us to get people thinking. So I'll move
Yeah.
on to the next question. Is it fair to say that as humans, we desire intimacy?
Sure. Yes. Yes. It's. I mean, it's how we were made. Um, we we were made to be relational, and part of the relationship that we seek between Adam and Eve, man and woman, part of that relationship, part of that communication, intimacy is part of it. It's not the whole thing, but it is part of the relationship that God designed us to participate in.
Yes, I do. And I do think intimacy is something important. I'd like to welcome our friend Stephanie. Thank you so much for tuning in, Stephanie.
Nice stuff.
Does true intimacy begin with God? Now, before you go into your answer, I would like to
Mm-hmm.
say that, hello, Mikey. Thank you so much for tuning in.
Mm-hmm.
I do believe that true intimacy does begin with God. I
Mm-hmm.
think when we go into a relationship with God and we are faithful to our part of the relationship, I
Mm-hmm.
do believe it teaches us about what true intimacy is about. And I
Mm-hmm.
do believe it helps us if we are faithful to that relationship. I think it prepares us for when we enter into a relationship with another individual. I think
Mm-hmm.
it teaches us because I think that after I really got into a deeper place with God, it
Mm-hmm.
helped me to, like, for the first time in my life, to have a
Mm-hmm.
standard for myself, because
Right.
I
Right.
think the way that God has loved me, he has
Mm-hmm.
shown me how to love myself, how to respect
That
myself,
right.
and he has
Right.
shown me what God's love feels so pure, and it's
Right.
such a good feeling that
Right.
I could
Yeah.
not go back to my
Mm-hmm.
old ways and my
Right.
old way of thinking,
Right.
because now I know that God loves me. So I'm
Right.
worth something. I'm valuable. I don't
Right.
have to throw myself around. I don't have to go seeking this so-called love, because a lot of,
Right.
what bothers me, a lot of women are judged for being promiscuous when
Mm.
all they're doing is simply looking for love. And
Right.
like that song says, looking for love in all the wrong places. I
Right.
think it truly begins when we really get to know God. I think it helps us to get to know ourselves. What's your
Right.
take on that?
And I think, just to continue in that same vein, what you're saying, because so much of intimacy between husband and wife, um, what where it moves from, lust is going to get you there, right? You see the person, and through the relationship and the courtship, that initial lust matures into love. What 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 takes that loving partnership into a true intimacy, is when you are able to to unveil, to unmask, to be vulnerable to your spouse, to your partner, um, where they are accepting you, all of you, so you're not thinking that your body is is ugly. You have to have intimacy and sex where the lights are off, but you can share, um, all of you, and you are not judging your partner on some body part, versus someone in the movie theater, but you are sharing yourself wholeheartedly, and you're accepting your partner wholeheartedly. um, the intimacy becomes so much more. There's a more oneness to it. So when you say that you, Brie, have to have a personal relationship with Christ first, that's when you're then able to give all to your partner, when you have that love
Well,
first
let me
within
ask you this then. So if that's the case, and we have to be honest, there are a lot of Christians who are struggling in this area,
Oh yeah,
who
it's a
have
journey.
given their
It is.
life and who have,
Yeah.
so it's something that we really have to be, I think, mindful of it. And
Hmm.
really, I think if we are struggling, then maybe we
Right.
need to go back to the drawing board and
Oh yeah.
really dig
Yeah.
deeper in our relationship with Christ. Because
Yeah.
what I'm hoping for tonight is that there are couples who will have a dialogue after this episode, people who
Right.
are struggling in this area.
But
So,
and
yeah,
it's not a one shot deal. It's just something that
no,
so you're constantly going back to the well. You're constantly going back to the foundation, to the word. You're constantly going back to God, and that's why God has to be the center, because you're growing, and you're going through different seasons and stages, individually, and then as a unit, the marriage, the relationship is also growing. So you constantly, have to go back to that foundation, to learn more, to even rediscover yourself, and to rediscover your partner, as you both grow and change in the relationship, and your needs change in the relationship. So it keeps you together, learning and growing.
yes. Let's talk about sex without intimacy
Mm.
versus intimacy without sex.
Mm.
I think that too often, and I know when I was a younger woman, I
Mhm.
associated sex with love and intimacy. That
Right.
was
Yeah.
not necessarily the
That's
case.
right.
You
Yeah.
know, there
Yeah.
are
We did
some
know.
people
Yeah.
that think that, oh, if I'm not having sex, or they
Mhm.
are convinced that in order to show this person that I love them and I want to
Mhm.
be intimate, that I have to have sex. But
Mhm.
sex,
Mhm.
you're having sex with someone, but it doesn't mean it may be intimate to you, but to the other person, it's
Mhm.
just it's just them needing to release some
Right.
tension. Like, I'm
Right.
saying that politely,
Right. Yeah.
but
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
it's just that need. And I think
Mhm.
honestly, especially for women, I think we honestly need to know the difference.
Exactly.
Because
Yeah.
seduction is a very powerful thing.
Mhm.
And,
Mhm.
with a narcissist, when you're
Mhm.
going through that love bombing stage, you
Mhm.
feel on top of the world. A
Mhm.
narcissist is so good at seducing,
Mhm.
and this person is thinking they're in an intimate situation when nothing
Mhm.
could be further from the truth.
Right. Right.
And then you have someone who could be struggling, or someone who's saying, you know what, I'm not ready to have sex yet, but there could still be intimacy
Mhm.
without sex, in my
Right.
personal opinion. So I would
Right.
like to hear your opinion on that.
Yeah. I think, you know, thinking back to my youthful days, um, sex was something that, um, we spoke about as boys. Um, you know, uh, how much, so it's almost like a checkboard, a tally. It had nothing to do with with any emotions. It was just purely physical, and it was
Yes.
just to say that you had these many encounters and with this person, as opposed to, you know. So so for that young lady, um, she, on the receiving end, she may be going into it, um, for love. She could be going into it, seeking, validation. She could be going in it, as a means of returning some gratitude, and thinking that, the only way to say thanks or to show gratitude to that young man is to have sex with him, as opposed to, realizing that her words would have been sufficient, to just say thanks to that person, you know, and not think that sex is the only thing, uh, that would suffice in that situation. So as children, parents need to, I talk a lot more about this with my boys. So it's just a conversation. So we were saying this generation, we need to have more conversations with our children, so they don't make the mistakes we made. Um, you have.
Well, let me say this, it's not just young people making these mistakes. You have people in our age group who are
Still making
making
those
these
mistakes.
mistakes.
Well,
You
right,
have men out there who are behaving no differently than they
right,
did when they were younger, because
right.
they're still
There's,
behaving
yeah,
and thinking like boys,
right,
and I don't
yeah,
mean that to be insulting, but it's the
yeah,
truth. And you
yeah,
have women who are still
but,
behaving like they did
right,
when they were young girls, still
yeah,
feeling that need for validation and still
mhm,
seeing sex as love. And I
right,
really think we have to have more of these
yeah,
conversations, because
yeah,
at the end of the day, it
mhm.
can do a lot of damage
It does,
psychologically.
it does, it
It
does,
has
yeah,
people stripped of their self-esteem, their
mhm,
dignity, and self-respect. So
yeah,
I think
yeah,
that if this is your if you are measuring your manhood
mhm,
by sleeping around,
mhm,
for a young boy to engage in
mhm,
this sort of behavior, because I do think it's unfortunate that
mhm,
young men are encouraged to go out there and be
right,
the go out there and
yeah,
have sex. Well, you're
yeah,
gonna have sex with someone. Stop and think, it's someone's daughter, it's
yeah.
someone's sister, it's
Exactly. Yeah.
so
But
it's
but
like
but
learning
society
respect.
doesn't. Society, the movies we watch, the what's on social media, what the things that the young person engages in, promotes casual sex. It I mean yes, it highlights it, it glorifies it. So the
I
music
don't think it's
videos, the
even
shows.
just social media. I think it's just there's an acceptance of
Right.
it's okay, son, attaboy,
Right.
but
Exactly.
it's
Yeah.
different when it's a young lady, because then she's a whore. She's this, she's that.
That, yeah,
You get
right.
what I'm saying? So there's that double standard that we
Yeah.
definitely need
But
to address.
Brie, I there's this other side, so you can swing the pendulum all the way from right to left, where now you have this young man or this young woman who is growing up in this strict Christian environment, and they're told, uh, you should not have sex. Sex is dirty. The Lord is going to strike you. If you do it, your head is going to explode. So they drive all kind of crazy things, into this young man's head and into this young woman's head about sex being so dirty, right? And then what they do now is,
Mhm.
uh, on the day that they're getting married, they the father turns to the son and pats him on the back and whisper in his ear and, tell him, go ahead. Tonight is the night. Go and have sex and enjoy it. That young man and that young woman, they are completely lost because all they heard before was that this thing is something that is dirty. And now you're telling me, so no, they're completely unprepared, right? So can you imagine?
Well, how about, this is the thing. I think as adults, we need to learn to have a frank, honest
Better, yes,
conversation
yes,
with
that,
young people about this topic.
yeah,
It's just like, kids used to be told about coming from a stork or under the cabbage patch and stupid things like that. We need to
right,
have honest, frank conversations
right,
with our
right,
children about this. And I
yeah,
think it's very unfortunate for those who were told that it's dirty. This is a
mhm,
gift from God. It's a
it
gift
is,
from
right.
God.
Yeah,
And,
Christians don't talk about it.
with
It's a harsh.
unfortunately,
Yeah,
but at the end
right,
of the day, there are natural
mhm,
yearning. There are feelings that you will have as you get older. I
right,
think, we need to have these conversations
right,
with our kids when they're younger to let
right,
them understand it's the most natural thing in the world, but a
right,
time and a place. And,
right. Yeah,
also about having the maturity and all
mhm,
that comes with it,
mhm,
because there's more to it than just the act itself. It's
right.
physical, but it's also emotional. It's
It's the
also
emotional
mental,
aspect of it.
right?
Right,
So I
right,
think
exactly.
that these are the conversations that
Right.
we need to have, because I think a
Yeah,
lot of us went into first encounters with a lot of misinformation,
you're
and
right.
a lot of people from that first encounter not even being confused about it, not really understanding what took place,
Right,
and like,
right,
you hear other people talking about it and their take on it is so different from yours.
right.
So I
You so
do
right.
think
Yeah,
the
yeah,
conversations need to take place. Now,
yeah. Full
I'd like to,
conversation. Yeah, yeah,
right,
yeah.
honest
Hmm,
conversations.
hmm,
Now,
hmm,
how important is it to feel safe and
hmm,
trust your partner? I think this is
hmm,
big, because I
hmm,
think that if you're in a situation, it's, and I'm talking about, if even, think about it. There are people who are married,
hmm.
they do not feel safe. They do
Right.
not have that trust in their partner.
Hmm,
There are
hmm.
things that a lot of people carry a
Because
lot
it
of
is still
trauma.
held. It is still held because sex is still held in secrecy in their minds.
Right.
So they approach, although they're married, they still approach it with a certain amount of hesitancy, a certain amount of trepidation, because they have not settled the matter um, with themselves and God. They have not um, put put in the work to understand uh, the, that this is a gift from God, right? So so marriage doesn't solve the problem.
It's,
You
listen, there are a lot of people who got married so they could have sex,
right,
who
yeah,
end up
yeah,
very disappointed. You know,
yeah,
we have to, we really need to have these conversations.
yeah, but yeah,
There was a
mhm,
book. I don't know if that book is still around.
mhm,
Heather may
mhm.
remember this book, On Becoming a Woman,
Right,
and it was
yeah,
On
mhm,
Becoming a Man.
mhm,
Now, these books
mhm.
had great information. They really did. But
Yeah,
I think it would have been better for a
yeah,
class or some sort,
yeah,
so
yeah,
kids could really talk and things be explained to them. My
yeah,
aunt Sylvie bought me a copy of that book. I may have been
yeah,
about 13. But to be
yeah,
honest
yeah.
with you, I
But it
didn't
packed.
understand half of what I read. But
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
it would have been nice to
mhm,
really have that conversation so that
yeah,
more of what I read would have made sense.
yeah,
But it
yeah,
was
yeah,
actually
yeah,
a
yeah.
good book.
It was a good starting point,
Yes.
but but a lot more needed to be told. Um, More conversation between that young girl and her mother, and that young girl and her dad. So she
Heather,
has to
Heather
she has to
remembers
get
Heather remembers
both.
the book. Yeah.
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 So, but
Uh,
let's talk about that,
mhm.
the feeling safe and
Feeling safe.
having that
Yeah.
trust in your partner, because
Mhm.
years ago, and I'm
Mhm.
talking about years, I
Uh,
remember reading an article in, I think it was in
uh,
Ebony magazine, and they used to
mhm.
have this, it was almost like a Dear Abby type thing, but it was
Okay.
to a doctor, right?
Right. Right.
And
Right.
a woman mentioned that her husband liked to engage in sex first thing in the morning, and
Okay.
that she would tell him, look, I just need to go to the bathroom. And he
Mhm.
would tell her that she was selfish. She
Wow.
was selfish because she needed to go and believe herself. And
Wow.
I will never forget the doctor's response, because what
Mhm.
the doctor basically was telling her is that you are dealing with abuse, because it's
Mhm.
like for you to go and and relieve yourself, because
Mhm.
think about how uncomfortable
Mhm.
that
Mhm.
sex would be if
Mhm.
you have a
Mhm.
full bladder. And how
Right.
selfish can you be that you
Right.
can't wait a few seconds for someone? So
Right.
that's not a spouse you're going to trust. That's
Right.
not a person you're going to feel comfortable with. And I
Right.
think it's
Right.
important, because I think usually the signs are there before marriage, when a
Mhm.
person is selfish and a person is inconsiderate in
Mhm.
that way. I
Right.
think that that's a red flag that we need to take into consideration
Mhm.
before walking down the aisle. But
Yeah.
let's talk about the difference of intimacy or lovemaking when there is that trust, when there is that feeling of safety. And I do believe that the man wants to feel like that, just like the woman does,
Mhm.
safe, and that they can trust their partner.
Right. And it m- men probably would not say it, because it's not a manly thing to say, but so much of who we are, um, you know, is riding on our ego. So it's very easy for him to 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 get a bruised ego, and that then turns and manifests into all manner of things. So trust is important in that marriage, because if his wife then turns around and says something, and he interprets it as he is not performing well enough to her standards, um, if he feels like he's been compared to, whoever is in the magazine, in the TV, whatever, then then he will not trust her, which then means that he will probably not want to engage into any sexual intimacy, romance with her, because he's going to always be thinking that uh, something is wrong with him. And, so that may lead to erectile dysfunction, because, erectile dysfunction is not just physical. Uh, a large portion of it is psychological. So trust in marriage is important for the wife, so that she can be able to give all of herself, all
I
of
mean,
her
but
love.
wouldn't you think it would be on both sides? Because listen,
But
especially
it's needed.
older women,
Trust is needed on both sides.
on both sides. Okay,
It's
that
needed. Yeah.
definitely. But I think that this is just my opinion. I think
Mhm.
both people need to have that level of safety. But I do
Right.
think,
Yeah.
but respect should be a part of it. I
Yes.
I
Yeah.
do believe that, especially for women as they get older, society is
Right.
very unkind to aging women.
Right.
And there is a trend where a lot of men, when they get remarried, it's usually a much younger woman. That
Right.
is
Right.
that's just the way it is. But at
Yeah.
the end of the day, I think there should be a level of comfort that we have within
We have.
ourselves
Yeah.
to feel
Yeah.
good
Yeah.
about who and what we are. But
Because
I think
who you are at 20, 22, and you got married early, you're not going to be that person when you're 42 and 40, or 52 and 50, things are going to change. So your body is going to change, how you function is going to change. So uh, you have to have trust and respect in the relationship and in the bedroom in order for true intimacy to really flourish uh, throughout the season of the marriage, not only at the early part, but throughout the entire lifespan of the marriage.
Let's talk about erectile dysfunction.
Okay.
I know that a lot of men, that they do struggle with that, especially as they get older,
Mm,
which I do believe will lead to performance anxiety.
mm,
I can only imagine how it would feel for a man to experience that for the
mm,
first time,
mm,
worrying, okay, is this a permanent thing? Will this
right.
always happen? You
Mm,
know, I
mm,
do believe when a man is in that situation, he should have
mm,
that conversation with his wife. If
mm,
he's feeling insecure about himself,
right.
that's where
Right.
trust and true intimacy comes
Right.
in, because I do
Mm,
believe if it's a marriage partnership, you should
mm.
be able to sit down and have that
You should
frank
be.
conversation with your spouse.
Right.
Hey, I'm
Definitely.
not feeling so good about myself,
Mm,
or I'm struggling in this area.
mm,
What I would like to say to the men out there is, if you are
mm,
struggling in that area, I
mm,
really believe that if you sit down with your wife and tell her how you're truly feeling, if
mm,
she loves you,
mm.
she will deal with it. You will deal with it together. I think
Right.
it would take away some of the anxiety. And
Mm,
I do believe that at the end of the day, as adults,
mm,
we really have to be kind to our partners. Sometimes it could be
yeah.
from sickness. If a
Right.
person is not feeling well, if they're going through a health struggle, it cannot
Mm,
be held against them if they're struggling with
right.
erectile dysfunction. And I
Right.
do believe that it's time to just sit and talk and have that conversation and
Mm,
learn to experience different types of intimacy.
mm,
Intimacy doesn't have to involve sex. And
mm,
I do
mm,
believe that eventually, as the person may feel better or they do whatever needs to be done, take your
mm,
time. But like I said, have that conversation. But I think
mm.
reassurance is very important. I mean, what's your take on that?
I'm glad that that you're saying that so that the viewers, the male viewers, can hear that coming from a female.
Yes.
That 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 it is that they're not just hearing it from me, but from a female, so that they can say, "Oh, so that narrative that I have in my head, it's only in my head. Maybe my wife, because I heard it on Bree's podcast, where she is saying that she would be open to work with her husband, that this is not a deal breaker, then maybe I can go to my wife and express uh, what's truly happening. Um, instead of masking it, instead of probably making her feel bad about my problem because I was ashamed or not even willing to admit that I have a problem.
I
So
mean, let me
I'm
ask you
hoping
this.
that what you said
Let me ask
encourages someone.
I hope so, because I think this is a time, and look, I'm just going by conversations I've had
Mhm,
over the years with different women, but I
mhm,
think this is a time that a lot of men, out of insecurity, and maybe I'm
mhm,
wrong, they'll
mhm,
turn to masturbation, they'll turn to
mhm,
pornography instead of
mhm.
turning to their wife. You know,
Right.
if this wife is feeling unloved and
Mhm.
unwanted,
Right.
it's like
Right.
she's confused, like, what's
Mhm.
going on? And I
Yeah.
think it's unfair of a spouse to treat
Mhm,
his spouse like that. Like, if you're suffering, your
mhm.
wife, if have that conversation together,
Right.
but
Because
be mature
you,
about it.
yeah, because breathe down, like what you said there, um, that may come as a surprise to someone, to a viewer. They may be like, well, how is she saying that he has erectile dysfunction, but yet still he's able to
Listen, they
masturbate.
may feel
You
like
know,
they can
Be-
get enough from self-pleasuring. You
right?
know, they don't feel confident anymore for the most part to
So
because the
it takes
performance anxiety.
it takes on different forms and different shades. So it's not just one thing.
No,
But for another man, um, it may be that he cannot get an erection. Period. Whether it's with himself or through social media
or
or
you know,
through
premature
his partner.
ejaculation. You know, some men are,
Right.
you know, if you
You know.
can't or you can't maintain an erection for very long, it
Right.
becomes
Exactly.
embarrassing for men. So they'd rather hide away, you
And
know,
right.
masturbate, watch porn or whatever. But that is not, that will
It's not
not help.
helpful
Right.
because
It's
then
not
the
helpful.
wife the wife is now left to her own thoughts, and she's going to do all that self-blaming, thinking that she is the reason for why her husband doesn't want to touch her, when in fact nothing is wrong with her. The problem lies with him. And
And
if
I
he
think
would
that's
just
sad. A woman is too often punished for that. You know,
right,
like I said, there are ways, there are medications, there are things.
yeah,
Sometimes it's a lifestyle change. But, you
right,
know, I
yeah.
do believe that
It could be
this,
overweight, it could
right,
be
it could be so many
diabetes, it
different
could be
factors. Yeah.
high blood pressure. So there are physical aspects to it, and there are psychological aspects to it. But the important thing is there are solutions to it.
There's
And
there's so many different things that can
right,
be done today. So
mhm,
instead of just hiding in shame about it and
right,
just
right,
letting it linger on and eventually
mhm,
destroy a marriage, I
right,
think we need to be able to have these conversations. Now, I'd like to move on to
mhm.
attachment style and compatibility. I think that's
Attack.
important.
No,
Now, they often say that opposites attract, and
mhm,
and that can all be well and good, but some people are not compatible in the bedroom. And I think this is where we have to have conversations also to deal with it. Because if you're already in the relationship, what's done is done. But you know,
mhm,
there's the secure attachment, anxious attachment, avoidant attachment, and fearful avoidant attachment.
mhm,
So, I mean, like for instance, if you're a secure, if you're secure and you're with
mhm,
someone that's maybe avoidant,
mhm,
that's going to be tough. Now, I think a
mhm,
person who is secure, they
mhm,
may have enough confidence in themselves where they won't take it personally and
mhm,
may
mhm.
be able to help a person work it through. But
Work.
I
Yeah.
think that you need to look before we walk down the aisle, we tend to see what the connection, we get an idea, I think, fairly early, and too often we're afraid to walk away. Now, I mean,
Yeah.
what do you think?
Yeah. So that is important. But but to realize that that none of us are any one of those things for the rest of our lives, in the sense that we can be um, multiple of those things, and it can change, it can vary. And 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 the beauty about it is it's not static. You
You
can
can change it, but what
you
if
can
a
grow out
person
of it, you
does
know.
not make the effort? Because some effort has to take place, right?
Right.
So what
Right.
happens if a person does not do their part to make a change, male
Right.
or female?
Right. So again, what we're talking about here is two young people that that's looking towards growing together. They're looking towards making that move. And we're always promoting um,
But
along.
what about an older couple? Hello, Janice, thank you for tuning in. What about an older couple? I do find that older people
Mhm.
tend to be more set in their ways.
Set in their
I
ways.
know I'm definitely more set in my ways. So what
Yeah,
if that
but
person doesn't feel they need to change?
but okay, so if if you're in a relationship and the your partner is bringing up this self-awareness to you, and helping you to to see that, uh, that there is an issue that you need to work on. If you then turn around and say, well, I'm grown, I've been doing this all my life, I'm just being me, well, that's fine too. You can be you all by yourself. I'll just take myself and go somewhere else. um, so that's fine with you. If you want to be stuck in that as an old person, then that's fine. I can't help you. If you're not willing to help yourself, then I can't help you. I can pray with you, pray for you, but I'm not going to join myself. No, because you are unwilling. So I'm not going to put myself and tie myself in a permanent relationship like marriage to someone that's unwilling to hear. That doesn't make any sense. So you'd be at a loss for that. But
Definitely.
you're right. But yeah, but for the young person, and the same thing applies. You know, you have these open, genuine, loving, uh, connections, um, to help each other grow. And if you see if you see the person is willing and making steps, then fine, you can progress with the relationship. Because again, this is not like a deal breaker if the person is willing to change. Because uh, these attachment labels, uh, they're very soft, in the sense that it's easy for you to show some self-awareness and mature and grow out of it. But like you said, in those instances where the partner shows no interest and thinks that you are asking too much, then you simply just need to leave. I mean, that person is clearly not who God intended you to be with.
Well, I'm
Yeah.
I'm glad you said that, because I do think that some people, especially if they're engaged, they
Mhm.
feel, oh, it will be so embarrassing, or money's been spent and things like that. But you want marriage to be an enjoyable
Yeah.
relationship. You don't want it to be like a prison sentence.
Yeah.
So I
A,
think
bro-
these are things
a
that are
broken
important.
engagement is way cheaper than divorce.
Definitely, definitely. Let's talk about Song of Songs. It's one of my favorite scriptures, and I, every time I read it, I am
Mm,
moved by the passion. And,
mm,
it makes me think back to, they used to say women, if they talked about enjoying sex, they were a slut, they were a whore, you know, right? Because it was said that, oh, it's for the purpose of childbearing, and you're
mm,
supposed to
mm.
just lay there and just it's about the man, which I think,
Mhm.
which what
Wow.
terrible information to put
Yes.
out
Yes.
there. But
Right.
I
Right.
think it's a gift from God. I
Yeah.
think that he wanted us to be passionate. He wanted us to
Mm,
feel
yeah.
a certain way within marriage. What
Yeah.
what would you like to say on that topic?
Um, Marriage, all aspects of the marriage, including intimacy, uh, both should equally, um, get and give all that they can. So I'm supposed to ensure that, as I am meeting my needs, I am putting your needs. I'm prioritizing your needs above mine. I'm prioritizing, um, that that you are getting, um, full pleasure in this intimacy as I am, right? And I remember, my pastor, uh, you know, he pulled out a whiteboard, and actually I'm like, so he put like a XY plane. I'm like, as a math lecturer, I'm like, okay, where is he going with this? So he drew like, two curves on it, like a parabola. And I was dying inside because I saw what he was doing, and I was looking at my my to be wife beside me, and I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm like, I wonder what she's thinking, like, what is Pastor doing, but we have to talk about it. Um, you know, our pastor that gave us the counseling was great. I wish, you know, there were 1,000 pastors like that out there, but um, but it is something uh, the Bible speaks about. Song of Solomon, like Proverbs 5, ensuring that that your fountain is full, that you should find pleasure in your wife's bosom, and be intoxicated with her love. And you could just swap out those words, and for the female to find pleasure in her husband's chest and be intoxicated with his love. So God is not shy about us having sex, right? Having intimacy and coming to the fullness of joy, where we feel at one in it, and He is glorified in that process. So I fully endorse uh, that my wife needs to come away from the experience just as happy as I am.
And for those like us, those who are struggling with erectile dysfunction,
Mm.
I do think that couples can still enjoy
Right.
intimacy. They can still have a fulfilling
Right.
relationship, but I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
communication has
Yeah.
to be,
The
you
first.
know,
Right. Yeah.
right.
Yeah. Yeah. Because
Communication. Yes. Yeah.
really, because again, even without quote unquote a diagnostic,
Yeah.
erectile dysfunction, both men and women go through changes once we hit 40, and we go through these stages. Um, so for a variety of reasons, um, when you hit 60 and going into 70, the percentage of couples that are fully engaged in physical um, intimacy is going to decline. But that doesn't mean that the larger majority of couples who are in their 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s, that they can't continue to have intimacy.
Yeah.
So we just have to redefine it as we grow older, to have that emotional intimacy, and so that we can talk about uh, feeling close to your spouse, um, and feeling good about yourself, and enjoying um, each other, and feeling full in that, because you're cuddling, you're hugging, you're embracing, um, you have these affectionate moments, with your hands, whether you're touching shoulders, or holding each other's hands, or you could be just staring in each other's eyes, or you're kneeling down, and you're in each other's space as you're praying. So there is no reason to think that intimacy cannot be achieved and sustained throughout the entire lifespan of the marriage.
And would you agree that it takes effort on both on both members of the couple?
Of course.
Because I would like to say this, and I can only speak from a woman's perspective, but it's like, and I'm not saying all men, but there are men who they barely speak to their wives. They really don't show much affection. It's very difficult, I think, for a woman to, then all of a sudden when it's bedtime and then you choose to roll over at that time, and then you expect her to just be receptive to that. That's to me like you're dishing out crumbs to someone. I think that as a husband, and I think it's the same thing for the wife, you have to be giving throughout the day. It can't just be about let's just jump in bed now, and not, because people carry things with them mentally, carry things with them emotionally. And it's really hard to say that you want to be intimate with someone if you feel they've been unkind or taken you for granted. I mean, would you agree or disagree with that?
Oh yeah. For sure. You have to make deposits along the way if you want to have a good withdrawal. I mean, finance will tell you that. If you want your pot to be overflowing at the end of the day, you have to be depositing something in that. You have to be expressing interest and love throughout the day in the manner that your spouse would receive it, because not everybody love language is the same. So for one person it may mean waking up and making breakfast for the person as you're both hustling to get out of the house. You could make sure that the car is warmed up. You could make sure that there is coffee, tea, and toast ready for that person as you're leaving. You could just whisper. You could be praying with the person. A kiss, a hug, a slap. It could, for another person, it could mean leaving a voicemail on that person's work phone. So when they get to work, they may be like, wow, okay, I can't wait for 5 o'clock to come because I need to go home, because of the voicemail. So there are many ways to set the tone so that so it's not just you get what you want, but you get what you want to give to that person, right? Because the idea is you want to each love each other, right? So it's not just about fulfilling my needs later on, but I want him to be full, right? So yes, it's like you said, Bree. It can't be simply rolling over at 11 and nudging the person. No.
Yeah, definitely takes some effort.
Yeah.
Let's talk about sex being used as a weapon. I think that that's where I really believe, communication. And I think that if you are going to use it as a weapon, then listen, I'm not here advocating divorce, but I do think there are some things that it's not worth living with or enduring. And that's where I think that, counseling or something is needed. But what would you say to those who use it as a weapon? And whether you use it to physically abuse, whether you withhold, whatever it is, or you're out there like, for instance, a partner may know that their spouse is out there with other people, but no contact with them. I don't think I'd want to sleep with someone who's out there sleeping with other people. But I mean, God did not mean for this gift to be used as a weapon. You know, it's supposed to be an act of love.
Right.
So, I mean,
Yeah.
what is your
Yeah.
opinion of that?
Yeah. 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 If either party, whether it's the man or the woman, to put your spouse in a position where they have to beg for your affection, and you are using that as some dangling carrot so that you can get your way before you give them this thing that they want, is just cruel and unfair. And a conversation needs to be had. That that cannot, you know, that can't be sustained for long. Uh, it's not healthy.
Well,
Uh,
you know, some people have lived like that for years and years, Andrew. It's unfortunate,
Unfortunately, it
but
is,
true.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But again, not because some do makes it right, um, but it does happen. Some people are, they feel indebted. Their self-esteem is so low. They feel so beholden. Who they are is so much wrapped up into this other person. So so all those things are dangerous. It's unhealthy. But yes, we know it happens. But the best the best way is to have conversations, to get help, therapy, counseling, friends, your pastor, uh, so that you both realize that what's taking place needs to be changed. Yeah.
Let's talk about having honest conversations. You
Mm,
know, whether
mm,
it's something that you'd like to try or
right.
something that you dislike, or
Mm,
you may feel that your partner's not measuring up. You
mm,
know,
wow.
not, and it's not to insult or whatever, but you
Those are
feel that the
dangerous words,
performance
Bree.
could
Those
be better. You know, I mean, listen, it happens. I mean,
no, no,
I
yeah.
listen, I
Yeah,
think our
I would
egos
rather
should be
say
in check
the
to the
person
point where we
isn't.
can take it.
I'm just saying the person, I have not expressed my feelings, so therefore the person isn't giving me what I want. They're probably giving me what they think I want, but it is better to have those conversations so I can
Yes,
express what truly is it that I want. Because the person is, to say that the person isn't measuring up. Wow, like measuring up to what? Like
right.
that's going down a bad way. So yeah, but I get what you're saying. And again, it may mean, so supposedly you actually said that, Brie, in the goodness of your heart, but now the man interprets that as, oh my goodness, I am not measuring up. So sometimes you have to have these hard conversations. You have to have these tough conversations. You have to have these honest conversations. And not all the time the words are going to come out right initially.
Right.
But, 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 you know, both, so the person who feels injured and now tells you that, X, Y, and Z, your words caused me even more harm. You have to be sensitive enough to say, okay, that's really not what I meant. And then you have to now put in the work to reassure the person that this is what I really mean and not that. So again, it's a conversation. These things cannot, it it will not be recovered and resolved in one sitting, although
No.
we like, because that's what we see movies. But that's why it's a marriage, and that's why it's for life. So you have the conversation today. You continue it tomorrow, and you make sure that, like what we spoke about last week, that there's no silence in
Right.
between, so that the person doesn't get stuck in their head with that negative narrative, so that the onus is on you who made it use those words to come back and reassure the person of your love and what you really meant. So yes, and I always believe at the end of the day, both parties are going to be better for it, because
I
then,
think
yes, I mean, uh, we can't be so quick to dissolve a marriage relationship. I would say be quick to dissolve a courtship. Say no real fast in courtship, but when you are married, be slow with saying yes to something like divorce and separation. You have to put in the work. Don't just be so quick, so rash to to break away something that God intended um, to live forever. You know, so I again, you know, that's just my take. Not in a blank situation, but again, you know, that's my approach, because uh, the way how thoughtful I was with my spouse when we came together. So I am going to give her the benefit of all the doubts. I'm going to put in the hard work, because I believe this is what God called me to, right?
well,
So put in the work. Yes, have the
for the
conversation. That's
for the couple who is no longer able to engage
mhm.
sexually, whether
Yeah,
it's illness or whatever it is,
yeah,
you
yeah,
know,
yeah. It's not a death
you
sentence.
agree, would you agree that it doesn't have to be the end of a marriage?
No,
They could
no.
still have a very fulfilling and happy
Oh,
marriage,
yes, yes,
because
yes,
sex is
yes.
not everything, because that's why we want to differentiate between sex and
Mhm.
intimacy,
Yeah,
because intimacy is everything, in my opinion.
yes.
You
It
know, because like you
intimacy
said, you can have
involves
sex
the
with no
sex, but it
intimacy.
goes far beyond it.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. But I
Mhm.
do believe communication has to take place. And I
Mhm.
don't think that the person who may not be able to engage anymore, you
Mhm.
know, if you have to go to therapy, go to therapy. But
Yeah,
some people become frustrated and withdrawn, and
yeah,
they pull away from their spouse and they
yeah,
punish their spouse, you
yeah,
know, for
yeah,
that lack of ability. But it
yeah.
can be, I think, this is where a marriage can really
A good
flourish
man. Yeah, oh
if
yes. I
there's
mean, and
communication.
that's why we pray. That's why we have faith in God. So even if you are um, not having physical intimacy, um, um, God can do all things. Um, so 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 that may be where you are in this season, but like everything else, how God took you through all the hardships you had in life, God will take you through this too, and um, He or she will will come around eventually, because again, you are a praying husband, and or you are a praying wife. So you know, you just, one, you have the conversation with your spouse and you pray about it. Yeah, you know, you fight best on your knees. So pray, pray, and pray and pray. God hears and God answers. I believe in that wholeheartedly. So
Well, let's
it
talk about, you may have a spouse that has prayed and prayed and prayed and prayed, but the
mhm,
other partner has not done their part. You're talking about 20 years, 30 years, or
yeah,
whatever. If you notice, a lot of older couples are separating now, and I'm not saying don't pray. I believe in prayer,
mhm,
but I do believe at some point, because no one wants to live a miserable life. Now, I do believe that if you're communicating and you're being respectful of each other, you're
mhm,
being mindful of the marriage, it's worth fighting for. It's
yeah,
worth, hanging in there for. But we have to be, honestly, there are a lot of people, Andrew, who are at night lying in bed feeling so unwanted, feeling so
mhm,
frustrated. They
mhm,
just don't know what to do with themselves. They feel very bad about themselves.
Right.
self-esteem, all of that is like
Mhm.
God, you know?
Right. Mhm.
I really think it, because look, let's be honest, Christian or not, there are a lot of selfish spouses out there. You
Mhm.
know, there are spouses who, no matter what, they are not going to bend. They are not going to meet their spouse halfway. And I'm saying this because there are people that sometimes when they have that conversation, I want a divorce, and they will say 9 times out of 10, I didn't see it coming.
Mhm.
I didn't see it coming when it was coming for a very long time. You just
Mhm.
chose not to see it. And I
Right.
do think we talked about the silent treatment last week.
Mhm.
I think the silent treatment and the, not coming together
Mhm.
in the bedroom or coming together with intimacy,
Mhm.
that's
Mhm.
the killer of a marriage.
Yeah, yeah, but as many couples that are aging, that are experiencing what you're saying, there are equally as many couples out there that are aging, that are not having physical intimacy but are still having loving
Right.
relationships.
They're
And
still intimate. They're
right,
still
right.
intimate,
So
just without the sex. Yes.
right, exactly. So uh, so that's what I am putting out there, and for that person that is having issues in this season. I'm just saying that um, you know you need intervention. I mean, we can't sit here and diagnose all of that because we don't know if
No,
this is
and
a
that's
recent
not what it's
thing
about. But as
or
listen,
yeah, yeah.
I'm divorced, and I know I'm divorced for a reason. There's a lot
Mhm.
of people who are
Yeah.
divorced because they got to the place where they
Mhm.
just could no longer accept,
Right.
how things were going in the marriage, and that's what I'm
Mhm.
talking about. I
Yeah.
do believe that if you know that your partner is struggling with you
Mhm. Mhm.
because of certain things, I do
Mhm.
believe it needs to be addressed. Ignoring
Yeah.
it,
Right.
silent treatment and all that is not going to help. And
Right.
then there's a shock when the person wants to walk away, and it could be male or female,
Mhm.
because
Mhm.
not all spouses are bad spouses are male. Let's
Right.
be honest.
Right.
So I want to address seeing a sex therapist or just a regular therapist or
Right.
go to the pastor of your church with this issue. Some
Exactly.
people may be embarrassed to go
Right.
and have this conversation
Mhm.
with someone else outside of
Yeah.
the home, but sometimes it's necessary.
It's necessary.
What do
It
you
is.
think on that? What do you think about
Yeah.
that?
Yeah. That's where I would point anyone, and pretty much that's where I would point all couples. We all can do with a little bit of third party involvement somewhere along the line. You shouldn't wait for the wheel to be wobbling and to be you know
Yeah,
almost falling off, but
yeah,
to get a little juice back into it, a little zest, a little reaffirmation, so new tools. Um, it 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 can only be beneficial. So whether you are in a good season or you're in a bad season, either way, you should be open to counseling, to therapy. You should be open to help in general. And you should be praying for yourself before you start praying for your partner, asking God to show you what is it that I need to do better. Um, and likewise, pray for your partner and try to pray together because the act of praying together brings a certain closeness
when
and a
you say
certain
that's creating
oneness.
some intimacy, that's creating some intimacy right there, I
It,
believe.
it is, it is, because you're in each other's, you know, space, personal space. So that in and of itself will arouse a certain amount of emotions. You know, definitely. So
Yes, yeah. I mean, I definitely agree with you on that. There's a documentary that I watched years ago called Soul Food, and it talked about
called
the
soul.
harm of soul food.
Okay, okay.
The documentary,
Mm,
and there was a gentleman that said that he was no longer able to satisfy his wife, and he
mm,
felt really bad about it, but he realized it was his lifestyle.
mm,
So he
mm.
dedicated himself to going to the gym,
Right, right.
started
Mm,
juicing. You know,
mm,
he was doing the green juices. I remember him
mm.
saying the green juices. And he said he worked out faithfully. And he said
Yeah,
it wasn't overnight. He said
right.
it took a few months,
Pick
but
up,
he
yeah.
said he got back to where he
Mm,
was able to satisfy his wife. But
right.
he said,
Yeah.
and that was out of love for his wife, you know,
Exactly.
but he was
Right.
thankful, you know, and I was glad that he made the point, because for him to come and talk about his struggles
Mm,
that way, but
mm,
he
mm.
did something about it. So
Right.
sometimes
Right.
it's a simple lifestyle change,
Yeah.
going
Yeah.
to the doctor,
Yeah.
talking about it.
You're
You
right.
know, I mean, there are so many things, but I do believe that couples should be having these conversations,
Mm,
not to tear each other down, but to
right.
build
Yeah.
each other up. And
Right.
I think that we should be encouraging each other,
Yeah.
you know,
And
and
yeah,
not
yeah,
use it as an
yeah.
excuse to have an affair. This
Right.
is not
And
an excuse to
going
go
out,
run out
going,
there.
yeah, going out for walks together.
Yeah,
Instead of just simply um, telling your spouse uh, to, to lose weight, what about engaging with
yes,
your spouse to lose the weight? Well, what about doing it together?
yeah,
That will also add to the intimacy,
yes,
because you're showing you are showing kindness, and you're showing that you care. That goes so so far,
yeah.
so much further in the relationship than just mere words. Who, like you say, those little deposit that you make during the day, um, you know later on, who knows, right? But just working with your spouse and not criticizing,
Yes.
it's way more helpful. Getting rid of the alcohol, that's not good. Losing weight, um, getting your blood pressure, because all these things inhibit the
So we're
blood
basically
flow.
talking about a lifestyle change. I
Right.
think it's
Yeah.
something that a couple can do together. But you
Together.
know,
Yeah.
I would say the number one thing is communicate,
Yeah.
communicate, communicate, and action speaks louder than words.
Right.
Always remember that. Now,
Yeah.
Andrew, do you have any closing thoughts for tonight?
Yeah. I would just say, like you agree, the the couple that exercises together stays together, right? I don't know.
I was about
But
to tell you, nah, my ex-husband and I we used to be workout partners. Nah, not, not in every case, but I
yeah,
do think it's a good place to start,
it's a good
honestly.
place to
I
start.
think
Yeah.
if it's from a sincere place where you want
Yeah.
to make
Yeah.
changes together,
Yeah.
I think that's a great place to start.
Yeah.
But I think at the
Just
end
yeah.
of the
Yeah. Just
yeah,
be
I think
sincere. Be
yeah,
kind. Be
yes,
sincere. Be thoughtful.
yes.
Be thoughtful. Your words carry so much weight.
Oh yes,
Be
they do.
thoughtful with your words, right? Yeah, both men and women, be thoughtful. Um, if well, I mean, like you say, I mean, you're going to get older, and at a certain point, 80, 90, you can still have that love. You can still have
I
that
agree.
love for that, for each other. You can still be lying down and cuddling and sharing your thoughts and your feelings and your memories. Um, yeah, sharing life and still sharing your hope of of spending eternity with Christ when he comes. I mean,
What would you
nothing
say
beats that.
about taking, I would like to say this sometimes taking a trip, I think could be great.
Mm,
It doesn't have to be, it could be a weekend trip, but do
yeah,
something different. Do
yeah.
something
It doesn't have to
different.
be expensive, right?
Right.
Yeah, yeah,
Show
yeah.
interest.
Mm,
The man and the woman show
hmm.
interest in each
Yeah.
other. But I do believe at the end, if you're upset about
Hmm.
something, look, we should be able to sit down
Yeah.
and talk instead of letting things fester inside,
Mm,
because that will affect
yeah.
intimacy eventually.
Yeah.
Holding
Yeah.
grudges, like when we talked about
Yeah.
it last week, the
Yeah.
silent treatment. So I do, but look, why waste time? We
Each
should
other.
be
Yeah.
enjoying life,
Join. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Enjoying, and I think it's a blessing. And I would like to say to the women who are single or divorced like myself, CJ and Janice is saying those weekend
Mm,
trips are everything. A weekend trip
mm,
can be
yeah.
so refreshing. Do a weekend trip if you
Hmm.
can't do a week. But I just think it's just
The best.
investing in each other.
Hmm.
And for the single
Hmm.
people out there, you know, we have to learn to
Right.
love ourselves. We don't have to be out there
Right.
jumping from bed to bed to
Yeah.
bed. I do believe
Right.
learning to be patient, learning to have that understanding
Right.
that we
And right.
have
Yeah.
value, whether we're in a
And
relationship or not.
use the time of singleness to work on your intimacy with God, so that
Yeah,
because
yeah,
chances are you're not ready for this partner because you're not in that space where you are willing and able to give your all, which is what is required in marriage, and that's why so many marriages fail.
or sometimes, Andrew, sometimes I think people are
Right? Yeah,
still healing.
right.
They've had the
Mhm.
same bad relationship
Right.
over and over and over because they have not dealt with
Exactly.
their
And yeah,
issues. I think we have to
yeah.
work on ourselves. Like you said, take the time
Work on
to work
yourself.
on
Yeah.
yourself. And I
Hmm.
said it earlier, that
Yeah.
intimate relationship with God was a
And
game
it
changer for
puts you in
me,
a better
honestly.
position where you can make better judgments the next time around, because now
Yeah,
you have a certain self-awareness and self-confidence about you, so you don't feel needy, you don't feel that you have to chase the first thing that
exactly.
comes by. Now you're able to say no and stand your ground, and recognize that I was good before he or she came. You can go, I will wait,
Yes,
because what God
exactly.
has for me.
Exactly.
Right. So
Exactly.
don't rush it.
Exactly.
Don't.
Exactly. Andrew, I can tell you that the way I feel that God has treated me, I know how I need to
Yeah.
be treated now. I know
Hmm.
what love is, and I would rather
Hmm.
wait. I don't, that feeling of desperation or
Yeah.
have to be with someone
Yeah.
is no longer
Hmm.
there. That relationship with God is very
Right. Yeah.
fulfilling. And I think sometimes we're chasing
Hmm.
fulfillment that can only come
Hmm.
from God. It's not
Right.
going to come from sleeping around.
Yeah.
It's not going to come
Yeah.
from, that relationship with God
Yeah.
is
And
the
yeah.
foundation.
Yeah.
I
And I would
can't say it
and
any
I would
better
say,
than that.
one of those things that just rubs me the wrong way, Brie, is every time someone will say to me like, "Oh, she is your better half." If you
And we get what they mean, but I think that has to be
right,
from God.
right,
It has to be
that's what I'm
God.
saying, that that that
Yeah, and I get
that
that. Yeah.
if you're saying that this person makes makes me whole, this person is my better half, you're looking for someone to fulfill you. No, it means that you have work to do. You still have not learned that lesson.
Well, this the thing is, how many people will? A lot of people
Mm,
don't go deep. They have to get
mm.
to a certain point, because I used to believe
Right.
a lot of those
Yeah.
things. And I've been a
Yeah.
Christian for
Yeah.
years. but it's like being on my own
Mhm.
for a while. I've had time to
Right.
really slow down. I've had time
Right.
to think things through. But like I said, the game changer was my
Right.
relationship with God. Otherwise, I would still
Mhm.
be stuck
Right.
in that
Right.
mindset. I think that, it's not easy to get
Mhm.
to this point. And yeah, we still may
Mhm.
have our ups and
Yeah.
downs and struggles. At the end of the day, I'm not, and I'm not saying
Mhm.
you're judging anyone, but I know that, I would not judge a person who is struggling, because it's a
No.
real struggle.
Yeah.
And I get that
Yeah.
it's not easy, but I think we need to have
Yeah.
more communication
Yeah.
like this, more
Yeah.
conversations like this, honest
Experiencing
conversation.
struggle
Yeah.
is not indicative of a bad marriage. It's not a precursor for divorce. Every marriage is going to go through struggles. There is a season for everything under the sun, um, individually, as well as in your relationship. So you know, we have so much more to learn about God and what God wants of us before we run into this thing called marriage. I mean, if most of us thought about it really and truly, we would have not have gotten married in the first place. We would have waited, right?
And,
And
and I
there
would
would be less
definitely agree
marriages
with that. But I
in the
think we're
world.
all at different
Yeah,
stages.
but
We're all at
right,
different stages, and I think it's a
yeah,
learning experience. Many people who went into marriage, they went into marriage as Christians, and they just knew they were doing the right thing.
mm,
But I think as growth takes place over the years,
yeah,
sometimes people will grow apart.
mm,
But that's where I think it is important to stay in the word.
just stay
And
the
I
word.
think,
Yeah, and
like I
God's
said,
grace
therapy is
covers. Yeah,
important.
yeah, yeah.
And extend a little grace to each other. I
Exactly.
think sometimes we're
Exactly.
too hard on each other.
Yeah.
A little grace, I do believe, goes a long way.
Yeah.
But I am just hoping that this conversation
Helps.
will encourage the couples out there to
Yeah.
have a dialogue,
Yeah. From
and
healing to
to
someone.
uplift
Yeah.
each other,
Yeah.
encourage each other, and
Hmm.
come together. It's like, I think that being in a partnership
Hmm.
is a blessing, and I think that, we shouldn't
Right.
take it for granted.
Yeah.
I mean, to
Put in
put
the
in
work.
the
It
work, I
requires
do
work. Yeah.
believe
I
it's
mean,
worth it.
yeah. I
With
mean,
both
we can
people,
just keep
with
going
both
because
people.
like so I would just leave this. Um, read First Corinthians chapter 7, what Paul says, where in a big brush, he's literally saying, "Don't get married," because he knows what it involves, what it entails. So so he's even like promoted up front, like don't do it. But if you're going to, this is what is required of you. So read it over, go back to chapter 6 and then go to 7, go to 8 and then go back to 6 and go to 7. There's a lot of responsibility. It should not be entered in lightly, um, but uh, but God's grace can take us a long, long way. So that's my final take. It's a beautiful thing, but put in the work. Yeah.
And yeah, I do believe that both people
Yeah.
have a role to play. And I do believe it's a 50-50 role as far as the relationship
Mhm.
working together, encouraging and
Yeah.
uplifting each other. So, I would like to thank the viewers for tuning in tonight. And, Andrew, thank you for the conversation. And, for the viewers, communicate, communicate,
And
and
breathe.
communicate. Can't say it any
And just to
better
say
than that.
something else, because I know somebody's going to be like, okay, um, I I know you said that with all good intentions about 50-50. No, it has to be 100%. I can't give you 50.
Okay, you're talking about,
I
listen,
know.
we're getting all technical here. When I say 50-50, I'm talking about an equal
I know.
effort an equal effort from both people. So if you want 100 and
Yes.
100, however, as long as you're both doing an equal part
Yes.
of the giving and
Exactly.
taking,
I
not
know what you meant.
all
I know
on
what you
one
meant, but
part
I just want to
necessarily.
make sure that the viewer, you know, is yeah,
No, well, you know what? Okay, so it's
yes,
been clarified.
a
Equal,
100%.
equal.
Give
Okay,
all up.
equal. Let's
Yes,
work together.
together.
Let's work
Yes.
together. Take care, everyone. I'm wishing everyone a blessed week. Remember, love.